Hi everyone, this is Dr. Mike, host of the free iTunes podcast, Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike, but that's not why I'm here today. This is another Saving Savvy episode, and in this episode I break one of my own rules, and I'm also going to do a review on 4 different cameras. 4 cameras. Well, actually it's not going to be as bad as it sounds. So the rule that I'm breaking is, if you remember a few episodes ago, I said if you go to the store and you want to buy a camera, make sure that you buy one that's a brand name camera, like, Olympus or Sony or Canon or something like that. So I'm going to break that rule today. The second thing that I'm going to do is talk about 4 different cameras. And so today we're going to talk about the Agfa Photo Selecta 14. We're also going to talk about the GE X5. We're going to talk about the Agfa Photo Selecta 16, and we're also going to talk about the GE X500. The first 2 are 2010 model cameras. The last 2 are 2011 model cameras. But you know what? They're all the same. They're OEM cameras that have been rebranded to various brand names. There is a little difference. Last year's model was a 14 megapixel camera. This year model is a 16 megapixel camera. It also has a few very minor software changes that really don't affect anything. But even experts say, like CNET for instance, that the photo quality between the 2 cameras is absolutely identical. So even though the pixel count has changed, it hasn't changed anything else. So let's take a look at these cameras. What do you call a camera that looks like this? Well, I tend to call them super zoom cameras because they have, so we'll get that going. I'm going the wrong way. They have very big zoom lenses. Other people might call these bridge cameras because they are somewhere in between a simple point and shoot and a SLR camera. I guess that's pretty accurate. Marketing people tend to call these nowadays SLR style cameras. Now, I guess the style is sort of like an SLR, right? They're kind of similar, but that's the only thing that they have in common. The lineage of these cameras is in a point and shoot camera. So it's sort of like if you took a Toyota Corolla and you blinged it up with leather seats and a fancy stereo and lots of chrome on the outside. That's what these are. Now, those things are all nice in a Toyota Corolla, but you still have a Toyota Corolla at the end. You don't get a fancy Lexus, that sort of a thing. So, and we all know point and shoot cameras can take very, very excellent pictures under many circumstances, and I'm going to show you a lot of different pictures at the end of this presentation. So like most point and shoots nowadays, this camera is very, very sophisticated. So let me just run through some of the sophisticated features that it has, just so you have an idea all the different things that it can do. First of all, it has image stabilization, so if you're a little shaky, it will help with that. It also has a lot of kind of people features. So it has face recognition, which means it tends to specifically focus on faces if you have it set up that way. It has smile recognition. You can set it up so that it will only take the shot when everyone in the photo is smiling. It has blink recognition, which it will tell you if someone has blinked in the photo so you can retake. It will do a panorama mode and take 3 different pictures and stitch all of those in one photo seamlessly within the camera. It has a very cool feature that a lot of cameras now have, which I find is just kind of astounding. It has intelligent auto, and that's actually like artificial intelligence in the camera. So when I take a picture, it's going to figure out what that picture is, and it's actually going to set the parameters of the camera based on what it thinks. So if it sees an action shot, it'll freeze the frame. If it sees a portrait shot, it's going to make the skin tones look good. If it sees a landscape, it's going to make the landscape look nice and clear. And it does that with its little camera brain, which is awesome and amazing. Other point and shoots are now doing that, but it's still a pretty cool feature. It also will do some post-production processing. In other words, after you've taken the picture, it will actually do some processing. So you can do things like resize the picture or crop the picture. It has a red eye reduction feature, which I could not get it to work very well. It has an HDR feature. HDR is a very fancy sort of feature that tries to pull the detail out of shadows of digital images. This one is really not an HDR feature, but it does do some stuff, and I'll show you that in a later picture to kind of demonstrate that. So it has all those features too. But what really distinguishes this camera from a point and shoot are three different things. And this, by the way, sells for the cost of a point and shoot, actually an inexpensive point and shoot, for the 2011 model, about $129. You can find that everywhere. And for last year's model, which again has the identical picture quality, you can buy a refurb at places like newegg.com for $90. That's an OMG price. We'll put it that way. But what makes this different than just a typical point and shoot, besides the fact that it looks a little different? Three things. One, this. It has an electronic viewfinder. So if you're a person who likes to take your shots like this, which might be a little bit better in bright sunlight, or if you want to save a little energy by not using this LCD, which by the way works quite well in bright sunlight, or if you just want to steady the camera on your face, you got the electronic viewfinder and you can easily switch between the two. You also have this nice big knob up here, which has some extra features. So right from this knob here, you can select many things, but you can also select manual features. And what that means is that you can set things like the aperture, or you can set things like the shutter speed. And sometimes you can get very unusual or better shots by doing that manually. Also, if you're kind of thinking, gee, I want to get an expensive camera, but I don't know if I'll ever use that stuff, here's a very inexpensive camera. You can try it out on this. If you get good at this, you can transition those skills right over to the SLR camera or the fancier camera. But the main thing about this camera that makes it so desirable in this price range, again, is, oops, I always do this the wrong way. Did I do it the wrong way again? There we go. Is that the super zoom, a 15x or 15 times optical zoom, unheard of with this price range in a camera, and that really makes all the difference in the world. Now, when the professionals have reviewed this camera, they have generally liked it. They had two criticisms. One is they said it was kind of slow to respond. The other was they said, as most of these cameras that are point and shoot type cameras, that it didn't work particularly well in low light. As far as its slowness to respond, what I would say is that if you're used to a point and shoot camera and not a super fast DSLR, it responds pretty much the same way. It's perfectly natural that way. The one thing that I did find a little slow was the zooming, which you just saw me here again, kind of saying, "Oh, come on, zoom." That's a little slow, but it definitely works. The other thing that you wonder about is image quality. So we're going to take a look at a lot of images right now, if I can pull them up on my computer, and I'll kind of give you a rundown on what I think the image quality is, and you can see it for yourself. Come on, computer. There we go. All right, so in this first shot, you can see a panorama shot, and that shows you how you can easily stitch together three pictures. The next shot is a flash shot of my model here, my daughter, and you can see the skin tones are good. It's nice and crisp and sharp. There's a little barrel distortion in the lens, but that you would expect that with any inexpensive camera. The next shot shows a close-up of the cake that I made her. This is my famous, at least in my mind, rainbow cake, and it really looks very, very good on the camera. I wanted to test the low light capabilities, so in this shot she is only being lit by her reading lamp in a dark room, and the important thing here is that there's not a lot of that blotchy noise. So I think for a little camera with a little tiny sensor, the image quality is pretty good. Not as good as an SLR camera, of course, but not too bad, definitely usable. And when I color correct the white balance, I think it even looks better. This last shot in this series shows what that same picture would look like with the flash. Of course, crisper, better color range, that sort of thing, all of what you would expect. Okay, we went to our local park, and this is the wide angle view down the park. They're doing some construction in the park. What you don't realize is that at the end of the park, there's a little play area and a forked tree, a tree with like the trunk going up in like a V. So in this next shot, this is 15x, and you can see, if you look to the extreme left, that playground, and to the right, you can see the forked tree, which you could not see at all, but you also see something else. The image is softer, a little more washed out, and that's a phenomenon when you super zoom anything, because you're now kind of going through all that atmosphere, which has humidity and air currents and pollution and all sorts of other stuff. So those pictures are never quite as crisp, and that only gets worse the further out you go, which is a reason why if someone is selling a 50x or 100x zoom, well, the pictures might not be as good as you think. I usually find that 10x you get a good picture, up to 20 or 25x you get an acceptable picture. After that it starts to degrade more. But hey, what the heck. But the nice thing is that at this lower zoom, this 15x zoom, by color correcting it in the, or actually correcting the contrast and such in a photo editing program, I can bring it back to normal. Here's another shot of a distant shot, wide angle, with a bridge in the background over our mighty little river. If I zoom up, you can see that it gets much, much closer, see a lot of detail, and I did correct the contrast, again, for that same reason as above. This is another kind of a detail shot showing the detail that this camera can provide, and finally, another detail shot showing the detail that it can't provide. I thought this picture was kind of interesting because it shows that you can do a little bokeh effect. In other words, the sharp front view and then the blurry background, which is kind of nice to do for a lot of things. So I just threw that in there for fun. And this one here shows just a natural light kind of portrait with just a background, very simple shot. Now, I wanted to demonstrate that HDR function, and you can see that most clearly when you're filming something that has a lot of shadows and bright light, like shooting out of this graffiti-laden tunnel. And so that's the first shot, and then just with the camera software alone, I modified it and did that HDR and got this shot here. Now, true HDR takes multiple exposures of the same image, and then in something like Photoshop, you can press them all together into one image. This is really more like an automatic brightness control. It's still quite useful, but it's not true HDR. And then we have a couple more shots. This is just a foliage shot that shows that it does detail pretty well. I think you always have to have a flower shot for some reason. And since it's fall here in Illinois, but it's not freezing cold yet, we still have some flowers to look at. So there's a shot of that, which I think they're kind of pretty. Well, so what's the bottom line? Well, the bottom line, I think it's an outstanding value at either $129 or $90 for the refurb older model. In fact, that's an OMG value. Are there some cons with this camera? Well, of course. There's cons with every camera. First thing that I don't like is this lens cap just doesn't, I'm going to bring this down so I can see myself in here again. Oh, there we go. Is this lens cap that just doesn't really stay on very well. The other con that I have with this camera is that the movie mode is not very good. Now this takes VGA level movies, which are pretty close to DVD, so it's not an HD type of picture, but actually the video itself is not too bad. The problem is the audio is terrible, and I actually tried this on this camera. I also tried it on a X500 GE, which is the latest camera. Same thing. So either I got two really bad cameras to check out, or that's inherent with the problem. I did actually write AGFA, and they're writing me back, and maybe they come up with a solution, but we'll see. So that's the problem. And then also, since it's an OEM camera, we don't really know what the reliability rate is. The camera performed very well in my tests. I had no problems with it. I have no idea how it's going to work 6 months from now or 5 years from now. So that's my review of 4 cameras, really one camera. Very, very good deal. By the way, how does it compare to SLR camera? Come on, $1,000, around $100? Really? How does it compare to, let's say, a $400 or $500 little bridge camera or super zoom camera? Well, it's not going to compare as well to those either because they're 4 or 5 times more expensive. But it really does very, very well, and I think this would be a great family camera. And it's also small enough that it could even be a travel camera. Take care. If you have some time, please give my podcast a listen. It's called Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike. You can download it for free on iTunes. It's completely different than this show. Put a lot of work into it, which is why I'm always trying to promote it. I think it has a lot of good information. But other than that, have a great day.